Yeah, now can I get a PlayStation 5 though? That's what I want to know. How's the supply chain? You know, did buying
now maybe
Bungie
they
make
don't
it
have to keep bringing out
easier
new console,
for me to
Scott.
get a goddamn
You just play on the
console?
same fucking console, and this is just them all just like shaking hands, like, oh yes, yeah, you got your second class honors in your useless humanities degree. Good job. You know what I mean?
Another development in the acquisition world. I would say another console company, but obviously Sony is far bigger than a console company, and Microsoft is far bigger than a console company. Sony buys Bungie, $3.6 billion this week. And again, as we've talked about since we relaunched the show, IP, intellectual property, rights of the stuff you make and own, whether you're Riot and the League of Legends characters or whatever. Sony, big buy around Destiny, everyone is saying, right? The franchise of Destiny, the platform of Destiny, if you will, as a service, is like the big pitch here. I don't know what else Bungie is doing. I also find it funny that Bungie is the original Halo, but now Microsoft has Halo with a different company, but now Bungie has Destiny with Sony. And here's a little pie that someone tweeted out the other day I grabbed. I like looking at the various ways people show the corpo consolidation of the games world or the food world or whatever. So here's another way to look at it, the slice of the pie. You brought up an interesting point, Mitch, about this outlier to the far right. Endbringer.
Well, this is obviously a graphical representation of the umbrella of titles under each of these groups, but it doesn't, unfortunately, it's not intuitive in that it doesn't really represent market share of any of those properties. It's just, I think this is just split, this pie, by literally number of properties. You know what I mean? So I don't know, like how much it's going to really tell us here, because Ubisoft, it's just all their fucking subsidiary studios, right? Still, look, interesting to visualize. And the Embracer Group, it looks like a lot of like indie sort of studios. It's quite possible that there is like an agency that exists for indie studios to sort of publish titles through, so to prevent them from having to do it themselves, because obviously publishing requires a hell of a lot of like promotion, packaging, marketing, all that stuff that sometimes games studios don't come out of the box with. Like, good example is Hello Games, right? The guys that made No Man's Sky, just like they were literally an indie game dev company, and then Sony, I think it was Sony, bought them, and then Sony was the one that published games. Sony was the one that overpromised on a lot of what No Man's Sky was supposed to deliver, by the way. This is why it was considered such a disappointment. Hello Games didn't want to make too many promises, and Sony was like, no, we're promising this, and this about the game. And then they're still doing, like, years later, 4 or 5 years later, Hello Games are still working on trying to make No Man's Sky into what Sony said it was going to be. But I digress.
Yeah.
I find this a very interesting acquisition, not because it's necessarily a reactionary response to Activision getting acquired, although ironically Activision and Bungie had like a bit of a schism right, with this whole Destiny situation, so it seems like it could be a little bit
basically one way or another, or slept with each other or something.
Exactly. I mean, but isn't that gaming for you? Here's what's important, and I read this article. This is from IGN, and I read up on this because it's not like, oh, yes, we're acquiring this game development studio in order to stake our claim to the metaverse, bro. This is actually a play for live service games. Sony don't have a lot of first-party games. They don't have a lot of live service games. Now, to be very clear, there's a huge difference between a live service game and like a singular title, one-off release, like every fucking Call of Duty game, right? Like, you develop a game, over time, you release it, you patch it in the first couple of months, and you fucking let it go. Then you bring out the next iteration the next year, and the next year, and so on and so forth. Live service games are updated with new content over time, and they make a ton of money from in-game add-ons and in-game purchases, and they can release free-to-play, so it's a really accessible model, and then you can entice people to make purchases. It's basically how a mobile game works. Almost every mobile game is free-to-play with, like, premium content inside that eventually, players get enticed to sort of to spend on. Here's an interesting quote. This is from the CFO of Sony, Hiroki Totoki. There we go. Sorry, Japanese gentleman. In their latest earnings call, he said, from calendar year 2014 to calendar year 2021, the size of the global game content market doubled, driven by add-on content revenue from live game services, which grew at an average annual rate of 15% during this period. And they expect that trend to continue going forward. So this is, and I was talking about this in my Discord yesterday. This is an investment into live service games. And obviously, Bungie, that's what Destiny is, right? Destiny is a live service game, Destiny 2 at the very least, right? I don't know if there'll be a D3, but they keep releasing expansions, patches, content. People who are proponents of the game, who love the game, continue to purchase this content, right? You make much more than just a single release. And it appears now, Scott, we have the data to suggest that a live service model is much more profitable in the long term, as opposed to having to churn out new IP all the fucking time, or in Sony's position, act as publisher to a bunch of disparate sort of development studios in order to push their to push their game out. So they want to be first party here now with the acquisition of Bungie, as opposed to being just publisher. They want to be dev as well. They bring in a seasoned live service game a studio like Bungie, and they want to compete in that space. I believe that's the way to go. There's a reason why COD has been getting shitter and shitter every single year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Overwatch should never had an Overwatch 2. We can all agree it should have remained the live service game that was promised by Jeffrey Kaplan until Bobby Kotick decided to turn it into one of his fucking shitty Ponzi scheme series where it's just one game and then a sequel, then a sequel. Like, that is not, especially if you love esports, that is not what you want, right? You want a live service game where the devs are continually iterating and improving and adding content, fleshing the world out, working on balance, all this kind of stuff. You don't want to sit there knowing there'll be no content for fucking a whole year until you open your wallet and spend another $100 for the next soulless iteration of the same fucking corporate franchise.
I think a lot of us would even take a dead services game like Counter-Strike, right? Because it doesn't get updated for shit, but it's a services game.
They just bought a sticker pack, Scott. I saw some stickers announced yesterday by Cisco.
We did get stickers this
watch
week.
Your mouth.
We actually have a bunch of Valve news this week. But yeah. And like you said at the top of this news story, this obviously wasn't oh my God, Microsoft just bought Activision Blizzard. What the fuck? Get the wallet out. Who do we go buy? All these things take months and months and months before we hear about them. So this has probably been going on for a very long time. Now, it doesn't mean that it doesn't help when you're in boardrooms going, okay, our competitor in these spaces is also making these kind of moves to solidify these kind of things. We should do similar things too. Yeah, now can I get a PlayStation 5 though? That's what I want to know. Like, how's the supply chain? Did buying Bungie make it easier
new console,
for me
Scott,
to get a goddamn
you just
console?
play on the same fucking console.
Yeah, and also, I guess to clarify, no one in chat's talking about it, but they came right out and said, hey, just because we're buying Bungie doesn't mean we're going to make Destiny 2 exclusive to the PlayStation. That's not what this is about, No,
it's a terrible idea. I mean, even Microsoft didn't say that. Microsoft
Yeah.
still said that they'd be distributing content on Sony, that there might be some quote-unquote exclusives via Xbox Game Pass, but that they wouldn't just be like gating the actual content. So
because to your point, you kill your own services. Your game is a service if you literally limit where it can be played. That's just dumb.
Yeah, what are you trying to do? Do you think you're really going to sell more consoles or just have less people playing your game? Like, do the math.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the math exists, right, for these people. But look, it is an odd time. And, I want to know what you think about this, Scott, because we talked about monopolies before. And it feels like the games industry is consolidating, right? With all these large studios being acquired by even larger corporations. Is this healthy in general? And even specifically for games in general? If you're a games enjoyer, maybe you're an esporter as well. Is this cause for concern, or is this another day at the office in fucking post-capitalist gaming world?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple sides of it, right? And there are some pros and cons. So the pros would be, if you're a smaller game dev, smaller game publisher house, maybe one of these that are under the Embracer side, and you're getting that extra logistics support, you're getting some VC money, you're getting some help to help your little fledgling indie company go up against the Bungies, etc. And without that parent company that's got the money to spend on you, you wouldn't exist. Then maybe that's a pro, because now you're able to create and you do exist, right? Survival of the fittest works when the little guy can at least get a little chance to kind of survive. But eventually, if all that money consolidates into just a few, we're going to end up like a lot of the rest of our corporate and tech world, where it's a few giants who own everything. And then you just hope that the ones that own everything don't have anything to do with what this little company down here does, even though they're owned by the same company, right? Food, the food we eat is owned by 5 or 6 companies. Everything we drink is owned by a couple companies. Everything else we consume and buy is sold to us by 5 or 6 companies, depending on where you live. So it makes sense, but I think eventually the negatives will outweigh because those little indie guys get squeezed out. They stop existing because when you get that big, you don't care about the little indie guy being creative. You care about the spreadsheet about the little guy. And if that spreadsheet ain't what you want to see, the little guy's gone. It doesn't matter that he's making some really cool, diverse game that everyone on Reddit wants. Nope, last year, terrible numbers. Sell that shit off, right? Gordon Gekko, that shit. So I'm a natural cynic, Mitch, as you know. So I definitely look at consolidation. Sure. That's what we talked about in Counter-Strike. Too much consolidation. You go from an ecosystem that's kind of nice and competitive, and you want everyone battling to like one to rule them all, and then they can do whatever the fuck they want. We definitely don't want that. And again, I keep laughing at this fucking part. And I found, I saw this tweet. This is my chart to throw on the show. And then this Ubisoft thing. Right. I think someone from Ubisoft. I'm
just saying,
I think Ubisoft made this chart. I think someone at Ubi made this fucking chart to make them look like they're just as big as everybody else because it's literally just.
I think it is definitely. It's like a small dog barking really loud.
I didn't even notice it till yesterday.
We learn at school about how to interpret statistical representations and how to sort of identify how framing and biases can sort of be used in a marketing. This is exactly that. You know what I mean?
Now let me bring something your way.
Are you trying to tell me that? All right.
Back to the question of consolidation, right? Because media has done it a lot in this country, especially, right? Like local TV stations, things like that are owned by a conglomerate. Sinclair Media owns hundreds of TV stations, right? Gannett, hundreds of TV stations. So, and you'll see every so often on social media that the anchors on that Thursday 5 o'clock thing gave the exact same speech, right? Because they were all sent a memo from Sinclair Corporate and said, oh, here's your talking points for the end of the show. And it's usually something politically skewed or some sort of story they want to put a slant on, depending on whatever side of the media you want to be on. So my fear would be, my dystopian game dev world would be if people that want to make political and cultural attitude impact on us start leaning into their game devs to make certain kind of fucking games. Much like you can watch the news, and
that's already happening.
I know, but I mean more in a
literally already happening.
But I mean more in an overarching, very overlordy way, right? You can look at CNN on one side of
glorifying warfare, for example.
Okay, you got me. You know what I mean? If you look at our mainstream media in the U.S., you got Fox, CNN, and a couple on either side of that and in the middle of that. But those are the two teams. It has turned into a team sport. So will game dev...
The whole country's a team sport.
Yeah, so will game dev turn into that kind of sport where you've got a set of game devs or ownership that is making certain types of games and certain slants of viewpoints, and then you've got another set of game devs that are maybe taking the opposite? Because it wasn't always that way in news in America, right? It was very here's your 5 o'clock news, eat your fucking food, and then watch Happy Days. That left us years ago, mind you. So that would be the dystopian, is that they actually really start using this creative weight they have over us because we all love their shit, and they start giving us more. They already give us political agendas. I'm with you on that, with war and those kind of things. But I guess that would be my worst take, would be that they really lean heavy into the messaging.
I mean, yes, I honestly think there's a world this is just an example, but if Tencent and Microsoft own comparatively large shares of the gaming market, they're backed by very different individuals. At least I fucking think. Who knows? Maybe it's all the same. Maybe it's just the fucking Rothschild family the whole time, and we didn't fucking know. So I mean, that's why antitrust exists as well. So it was. I don't know if we have it in the show, but it is reported that there will be an antitrust inquiry into Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard. So it does look like legislators are getting a little bit more involved in this kind of stuff. Ostensibly, the reasoning for Sony makes a lot of sense. This is not a company that has really embraced the first-party game development life, and they might be investing more heavily in that direction. So that's fine. Well, we should keep talking more about his corporate acquisitions because I thought this one was just. I think this is just so emblematic, honestly, of the post-capitalist society that we live in. Is that the fucking phenomenal, the hot topic of Twitter of lately the game Wordle, which I don't play, have never played. I'll be honest with you, but it's more like I've had to try hard to not play it at this point, just because of how everywhere it is. The game has been purchased. So, first of all, congratulations to the bloke who just fucking came up with a game, right? He got it sold. That's what everyone who enters enterprise dreams of.
Yep.
The New York Times has purchased Wordle, which was released in October, with millions of daily users, millions of eyeballs on this app has been purchased. You know what the first thing they promised was, Scott?
Gonna keep it free,
They
Mitch.
wouldn't have to pay for it.
Keep it free.
Yeah. Well, look, it might be free, Scott, but you know, you have to pay your information. You have to give these motherfuckers your information. You have to create an account, or your free account. That's fine. But we know that there's always a cost, right?
Yeah.
It's not paywalled per se, but you know, you need a New York Times account. So that's what these platforms want, that more than your money a lot of the time.
And I think they even said, like, for the time being, they're going to keep it free. Like, they even caveated that, like, even setting it up that they might start charging for it or put it behind some other sort of paywall. It's very interesting. It's the only phrase I've ever banned on Twitter because I got really fucking tired. Horribly tired of my timeline every day being more Wordle than anything else. I'm like, I need better fucking people following me. Jesus fucking Christ. No offense if you play Wordle and follow me. I'm like, how do I get rid of this? I don't want to see Wordle anymore, man. I thought about NFT, but you know, I kept that because you got to keep abreast. Because,
you kept that?
Crypto land. Yeah, crypto land, man. I got to keep my eye on the pulse of shit.
Crypto land, dude.
So the interesting thing about this, and maybe a lot of people aren't putting two and two together, but like the most famous crossword puzzle company on the planet is also the New York Times, right? The New York Times crossword is probably something that has sold that newspaper for decades now. They sell books, they sell compilations. Yeah, the New York Times crossword is.
I knew, New York Times bestseller. I didn't know that their crossword was anything to write. I used to do the Sudoku in the Adelaide Advertiser whenever it was on the kitchen table.
And so I bet they see this as the new type of crossword for that kind of person, right? So why not grab it? You can't own. You can obviously crosswords are a creative, much like this, right? Someone has to make it up and figure out how the clues work and everything.
Yeah.
So same kind of wordy puzzle, if you will, different in one versus multiple. But I think it's neat in a way that they're grabbing this IP. But obviously it's a play to grab the excitement of everyone playing this thing, and the simple fact that they've bought it will probably turn away 20% of people who use it today. They'll be like, "Fuck you, I'm done." Or I'll go play. I'll play a Wordle knockoff or something, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, that's fine. I mean, like, but if you enjoy the content, you should then probably, be glad that the creator was able to, like, I don't know, have their life changed as a result of it.
Oh, yeah.
That's the incentive. That's the incentive that we as capitalists have to innovate, right?
Well, I was even reading.
That's kind of why.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Let me cut you off.
Oh no, just that's kind of why we bother inventing shit and improving shit in our sort of capitalist society. For all the downsides and bad things that there are, which, let's be honest, there are a lot of bad things about post-capitalism. This is one of the good ones.
Yeah, because a little bit of this story before this buyout was, this guy obviously made this whirlwind game, blew up, but then he had tons of copycats. He had tons of competition that were charging for their versions of Wordle on app stores and stuff, right? And it was like, what's the real Wordle?
Yep.
And he had to come out saying, mine's always free. This is it. It's not the other one. It's not Wordle Gold. It's not Wordle. You go to the app store and you'll see 10 of the exact same game, basically, by 10 different developers. So it was a real good kind of feel-good story in that sense, that he was getting basically copied and then got above that. And you're right. He got a payday, and he's probably set for life. And I guess we'll just see what the Times does with it. The funny part about this is, like, it's not like the New York Times hasn't had its own drama lately with what they really do for a living, right? They're in the midst of a unionizing of the journalists of the New York Times, right? Journalists in general, much like we've talked about game developers and jobs within game development that are slowly trying to unionize themselves in our space. This has been trying to happen in the media side for decades, for print reporters, people in newsrooms, all that kind of stuff. And so the drama of this announcement was not only, hey, they immediately kind of put it behind a collection your information wall, but a lot of the people were like, wait a minute, you can't afford to do this thing and help the journalists on your payroll, but you're out here spending money for this fucking thing?
I mean, it's pretty bad optics.
Yeah, bad optics.
It's bad optics for sure. Look, I mean, you know, the Times, so that aside, the Times doesn't have to charge people to use it. They can just put ads. They can monetize this out quite easily. I don't know if the original Wordle had ads or not. I don't know how the fuck old mate was like keeping the lights on. But it's a phenomenon because everyone has the same words, I guess. Everyone has the same each day. So like that's why people post that shit, because I want to show how like well they did. And then we had this like I don't know, this revelation, this self-reflective revelation where people started posting their almost failures, you know what I mean, a word, and being like, you know what, I'm a normal person just like you guys, you know, we are a kindred spirits. This game almost fucked me right over, and here's proof of it. So I don't have a problem with it. I mean, people are so split on it. It's so funny. Like, why the fuck does everything have to be like so vehemently one side or the other? Why can't people just be, it's not for me? You know what I mean? It's like, you know, everyone has to. It's like the same with NFTs.
Hey man, I didn't talk shit about it. I just blocked it, man. All right, I just blocked it.
Yeah, no, I know. See, I mean, that's probably the play. But like, people are like embracing activism as a fucking hobby on social media.
Oh sure.
Days.
Oh yeah.
So fucking boring.
Yeah. That is for sure.
Fucking boring.
Well, and I'll tell you what pissed me off.
Man.
I'll tell you what pissed me off that really made me do it. When I first started seeing them, I was like, what is this game? And then I'm like, oh, I played Mastermind as a kid, and Mastermind is one done with colored pegs, right? And you play with someone and you go, okay, you got one in the right color. It's the right color, but wrong spot. Anyway, same.
Oh, that's how it works.
Yeah, same kind of concept of like, you know, process of elimination, figuring out the colors. Anyway, and I was like, oh, this is kind of neat. And I went to click on the first tweet to go to the game to see what it was all about. And then I scrolled down to somebody else who had showed me their.
No.
And I'm like, oh, what game is this? Let me go download this. Nope.
It's made of emoji, motherfucker.
It's just a fucking picture. I can't do shit. So that's terrible social marketing, by the way. But obviously, he made.
You're mad. You're mad because you couldn't get taken to the app store
to then be addicted.
Tweets. You're actually mad that it was not a complete pipeline into playing the game. That's wild, isn't it?
It's now just think how many more people how many more zeros could have you charged the New York Times if you would have made that friendlier for everyone else to go play it right away instead of just be annoyed on their timeline?
God, I mean, I'm telling you, Wordles, like those Wordle emoji, is a secret language for people who peaked in high school English class and how they communicate with each other. Like people who like started a fucking arts degree, started philosophy or some shit, thought they were good at using words and whatnot. That's what this is. And this is just them all just like shaking hands like, oh yes, yeah, you got your second class honors in your useless humanities degree. Good job. You know what I mean? Oh, I can spell words really fucking well. Okay, good on you guys.
2 out of 5.
Right.
Nicely done. No nicely done.
Anyway, yeah, look, that's interesting. Look, let's see what happens with Wordle. If they put it behind they won't put it behind a paywall. There's no way they can do that. That's just like torpedoing your own thing. You can make money off this. Just put some fucking ads in it. Like it's just so easy.
But then there's also a question: does anyone own the copyright on this this puzzle form? Could I just make Skirtle? Can't own the game rules, right? Skirtle, you know, I'm making up words and, you know, Loodle. Yeah. Someone already said there's Loodle. So, you know, again, name recognition is key. They'd have to really fuck it up at this point, probably. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah.